Something fascinating is happening right now, a quiet social revolution that is defying decades of conventional wisdom. Across social media, a poignant and recurring question echoes from women. Where have all the good men gone? Meanwhile, the very men they are looking for are often in their own apartments, perfectly content, playing video games, cooking a steak, and enjoying a peace they never knew in their relationships. This reality marks a dramatic reversal of a long-held narrative. For generations, the operating theory was simple. Women needed to be convinced of a man's value, while men, fundamentally, needed women for survival. The stereotype of the helpless bachelor, surrounded by mess, living on takeout, emotionally stunted, was a cultural fixture. It was assumed that without a woman's civilizing influence, a man would inevitably succumb to loneliness and his own disarray. The belief was that his need for companionship and domestic management would ultimately override any desire for autonomy or self-respect. But a profound shift has occurred. The very loneliness that was supposed to drive men back to the negotiating table has instead become a sanctuary. For many men, the modern relationship began to feel less like a partnership and more like a high-stakes performance review where they were perpetually falling short. They were giving up their freedom, their financial resources, and their emotional peace for a dynamic that often seemed to offer criticism in return for their efforts. The result? Solitude, for a growing number of men, is not a punishment, it's a release. It is the silence to think, the space to breathe, and the autonomy to live life on their own terms. Their social needs, which are often more activity-based than conversation-based, are efficiently met through online gaming with friends or a weekly get-together. The pressure to be a perfect soulmate, co-parent, and emotional confidant all at once has been replaced by the simple, manageable goal of being oneself. The irony is thick. Women who were historically expected to be the dependent partners were supposed to be the ones liberated by walking away from unsatisfying relationships. They were sold a dream of having it all, a career, a perfect family, a passionate partnership, only to find the reality an exhausting treadmill of overwhelming expectations and burnout. And so, we arrive at this unexpected crossroads. The question is no longer, where have all the good men gone? But rather, why would they come back? Men have not disappeared. They have simply retreated into a world where their peace is prioritized, their efforts are their own, and their steaks are cooked to their exact preference. They were told they couldn't survive alone, but in the quiet of their own apartments, they are discovering they not only can, they are thriving. The great shift is here, and it turns out the ones truly set free were the men we never thought would be. But this is more than just a story of men finding contentment in solitude. It is a fundamental rewriting of the social contract between the sexes, and the consequences are rippling through every aspect of modern life. The digital sanctuary. We must look at where men are going, not just where they are leaving from. While women navigate digital landscapes that often amplify anxiety, from hypervigilant dating forums to curated highlight reels of seemingly perfect lives, men have been building digital sanctuaries. These are worlds predicated not on feeling, but on doing. A multiplayer video game isn't just an escape. It's a domain with clear objectives, measurable progress, and camaraderie built on shared tasks, not deep emotional labor. A YouTube channel or a forum on finance or philosophy offers a sense of purpose and learning without the burden of personal critique. In these spaces, a man's value is determined by his skill, his knowledge, or his contribution to a team. Metrics that feel far more tangible and achievable than the nebulous demands of modern romantic partnerships. The unseen burden of freedom for women. The female experience of this new landscape is often starkly different. The initial liberation of singledom can, over time, curdle into a different kind of strain, The burden of being solely responsible for every domestic and financial task, once a point of feminist pride, becomes a relentless, lonely grind. Friendships, while deeply emotional, can require a level of maintenance that is itself a form of work. The sisterhood is a powerful support system, but it cannot replicate the specific, often quiet, partnership many women still secretly crave. The constant cultural conversation about self-optimization, be smarter, be fitter, be more successful, be more spiritually aligned, creates a background hum of inadequacy. Her freedom becomes a cage of her own expectations, and the silence in her beautifully decorated apartment becomes a deafening reminder of the shared life she was promised but hasn't found. The communication chasm. This great divergence has created a chasm in communication where the two genders are essentially speaking different languages. When a woman says, "I need you to open up emotionally," she is often asking for vulnerability as proof of intimacy. A man hears, "I need you to perform emotional labor so I can assess your suitability." When a man retreats into silence to process a problem, he is engaging in what he believes is efficient self-reliance. A woman interprets this as a wall being put up, a refusal to let her in. This fundamental disconnect makes reconciliation seem futile. Why engage in a conversation where your words are constantly being misinterpreted and your instincts are pathologized? For men, it's easier to simply opt out of the conversation altogether. The recalibration of value. At its core, this is a story about a massive recalibration of male value. For decades, a man's value in a relationship was largely extrinsic. He was a provider, a protector, a fixer of things. As those roles became obsolete or shared, the new demand was for intrinsic value, emotional availability, constant communication, domestic partnership. Yet many men felt this new value system was a moving target, impossible to pin down and excel at. Now, outside of the traditional relationship structure, men are rediscovering and redefining their value on their own terms. Is a man's value his ability to grill the perfect steak for himself? To achieve a new rank in his favorite game? To have the freedom to spend a Saturday exactly as he pleases? Answerable to no one? The answer, for a growing number, is a resounding yes. This internal valuation is immune to external criticism. It doesn't require a partner's approval. It is self-validating and, for them, profoundly satisfying. The uncharted future. So, where does this leave us? This is not the end of relationships, but it is the end of relationships as we knew them. The old model, built on dependencies and rigid roles, is crumbling. The path forward is uncharted. The question for the future is not, how do we get men back into relationships? But what new form of connection can possibly appeal to a man who has tasted true peace? Any new paradigm will have to offer something more valuable than the serenity of his own solitude. It will have to be built on mutual respect for independence, acceptance of differing social and emotional needs, and a promise of addition, not extraction. The great shift is underway. Men are not lost. They are, for the first time, truly finding themselves. And the world is just beginning to understand what that means. What we are witnessing is not merely a social trend, but a profound psychological rebalancing. For generations, men were conditioned to derive their identity and self-worth from external validation, primarily through career success and their role as family providers. The modern era has systematically dismantled these traditional pillars, while simultaneously failing to provide viable alternatives. The initial result was what many termed a crisis of masculinity, a period of confusion and displacement, where men struggled to find their place in a rapidly changing world. However, what appeared to be a crisis was actually a transition. Men have been undergoing a quiet revolution in self-definition, moving from seeking external validation to cultivating internal satisfaction. The apartment-dwelling man content with his video games and steak represents not a regression but an evolution. someone who has decoupled his sense of self-worth from traditional metrics of success and found contentment in simple, controllable pleasures. The economic calculus of modern relationships. Beneath the emotional and social dynamics lies a stark economic reality that has fundamentally altered the relationship calculus. Historically, marriage provided clear economic benefits for both parties. Women gained financial security, men gained domestic management. Today, with women outpacing men in educational attainment and entering high-paying fields, the traditional economic incentive for marriage has evaporated for many. For men specifically, the financial risk-reward analysis of relationships has shifted dramatically. The potential financial consequences of divorce, from alimony to child support to asset division, now represent a catastrophic economic risk that can wipe out decades of work and savings. When combined with what many men perceive as diminishing emotional returns, the decision to remain single becomes not just emotionally preferable, but financially prudent. The man cooking his own steak in his apartment isn't just enjoying a meal, he's protecting his financial future. The wellness paradox. Simultaneously, we're witnessing what might be called the wellness paradox in gender dynamics. While women have embraced a culture of self-care, therapy, and emotional awareness at unprecedented levels, their self-reported happiness continues to decline. Men, largely rejecting this therapeutic culture in favor of practical solutions and activity-based coping mechanisms, report stable or increasing contentment. This paradox suggests that the relentless pursuit of emotional optimization through constant self-examination may itself be a source of anxiety. Men's tendency toward action-oriented coping, solving problems rather than endlessly analyzing them, appears to be serving them well in an increasingly complex world. The video game controller in a man's hand isn't merely an escape. It's a tool for engaging with challenges that have clear rules, achievable objectives, and tangible rewards. Everything that modern relationships often lack. The reimagining of community. As traditional relationship structures weaken, both genders are reimagining what community means. Women's social networks, while emotionally rich, often require intensive maintenance and can become sources of drama and comparison. Men have pioneered what might be called low-friction community, relationships based on shared activities rather than constant emotional disclosure. The online gaming squad, the weekly basketball game, the Discord server focused on a shared interest, these provide the benefits of social connection without the exhausting emotional labor. This model of community is sustainable, scalable, and psychologically manageable in a way that traditional social networks often are not. It represents a fundamental rethinking of how human connection can function in the modern age. The path forward. The solution to this great divergence isn't convincing men to return to a model that no longer serves them, nor is it women abandoning their hard-won independence. The path forward requires a radical reimagining of relationships themselves. Future successful partnerships may look less like the traditional enmeshed marriage and more like strategic alliances between two complete, self-sufficient individuals. They may involve consciously designed terms that respect each person's need for autonomy, different social styles, and varying emotional requirements. The goal would be partnership as enhancement rather than completion, where two whole people choose to share parts of their lives while maintaining their individual domains of peace and purpose. The man content in his apartment isn't the end of the story. He's the beginning of a new one. He represents a fundamental shift in human relationships that we're only beginning to understand. The future belongs not to those who lament the passing of old forms, but to those who can imagine new ones that hope,